As the world waits to see what the hell is gonna happen between the US and its allies and all the tension that's building up over Ukraine and Russia, there are some corporations, their CEOs and boards who are already salivating at what this could do for them. We have this January 25 to 26 leaked phone call. It was part of an earnings report with investors. And we have a little bit of what the CEO of Raytheon, Greg Hayes, has to say about this situation. This is being reported by In These Times, and here's a little bit of what was going on that call. Greg Hayes, CEO of Raytheon, says, "We just have to look to last week where we saw the drone attack in the UAE, which have attacked some of their other facilities, and of course the tensions in Eastern Europe, the tensions in the South China Sea, all of those things are putting pressure on some of the defense spending over there. So I fully expect we're going to see some benefit from it. I mean, sure, some people might die, but it's gonna be good for our bottom line. Isn't that awesome?" You also have the chairman, president, and CEO of Lockheed Martin, another massive defense contractor, Jim Takelett, who said, "If you look at the evolving threat level and the approach that some countries are taking, including North Korea, Iran, and through some of its proxies in Yemen and elsewhere, and especially Russia today, these days, and China, there's renewed great power competition that does include national defense and threats to it. This great power competition," he suggested, "bodes more business for the company." So they had what, like 3 months following the pullout from Afghanistan where there might have to be a little bit less defense spending, and then the US government reassured them all, no, just because there's less wars does not mean there will be less spending. And now we're gearing up for some excuse to keep the spending there. We're very worried about China. Russia's over there too. Chaos in the Middle East as always. They're gonna find a way to spend hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars. Francesca, what are your thoughts?
I mean, this is when you go, why do we have President Biden and not President Sanders, for the love of God? And here's why, because Democrats have no vision for real security for this country. They have no vision that is alternative to continuing to prop up the war machine, right? To what end? To create blowback in other countries, to destroy alliances, to get involved in democratic elections and overturn them? Why? Real security is having a safe bridge to drive over, having clean water to drink, having housing, having healthcare, having reproductive freedom, having education and access to, not just access, guaranteed education. So and look, the Hucks, the GOP is go into Afghanistan and or Iraq and literally take everything, leave no spoon, that's their vision. But the Democrats' vision for war is just a cut below that. It is just as hawkish in so many ways, and obviously there are gradations of that. But I'll just say it. Of course, they were doing this behind the scenes, and it's frustrating, and it makes us realize, man, if we don't get a new vision soon, we're sleepwalking into another war.
Yeah, absolutely. And that sleepwalking is exactly what I've been trying to caution against. And I think there are a lot of well-meaning people who identify as on the left, who unfortunately, I think it's because of the media climate that we've experienced throughout the Trump years, and yes, even during the Biden administration, just the constant, Russia's the boogeyman, Russia's the boogeyman. And look, a lot of that is true. Vladimir Putin is awful. There's no question about that. He does assassinate journalists. There's no question about that. So it's not like, we wanna whitewash or make excuses for or serve as apologists for Putin. However, I think that with any type of foreign policy issue, you can apply the same analysis that you typically do, where you look at incentives and disincentives. What are the drivers toward escalating toward war? And also, what are the government officials of Ukraine saying? I would argue that they're far more important, since they're the ones who are facing this alleged imminent threat from Russia. And so obviously the incentives really fall on the private defense contractors who are, like as John said, salivating at the idea of escalating war with Russia. But also I wanted to bring up the fact that Ukrainian officials, including the president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, have said repeatedly, listen, we do see Russia as a threat, but Russia's not an imminent threat, right? In fact, he had a call with Joe Biden just yesterday. I'm gonna read a quick excerpt from the CNN article. And it's CNN, it's not like CNN is looking to, do anti-war content. But they write that on the call with the Ukrainian official, which the Ukrainian official described as long as and frank, Biden warned his Ukrainian counterpart, Zelensky, that a Russian attack may be imminent, saying that an invasion was now virtually certain once the ground had frozen later in February. Zelensky, however, restated his position that the threat from Russia remains dangerous but ambiguous. And it's not certain that an attack will take place, the official said. So I don't know, guys. I think that the intelligence and analysis coming from Ukraine is important here, but I think it's a little questionable that the United States continues moving forward, continues escalating its war rhetoric, despite what Russia is saying is actually happening on the ground.
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, though, don't put too much faith in what the politicians of literally any country say. Biden, don't trust him. Ukraine, they are much more proximate to the situation, but he also has reasons to want to not panic his population. And definitely listen to.
This is just a call between. This is just a call between Zelensky.
Yeah, but he's put out public statements as well,
True.
saying that he doesn't believe. And definitely, listen to what Russian and its diplomats are saying. But they also could take the 100,000 troops away if they really wanted to send a strong signal that they're not going to war. I personally think that the situation is different than maybe what you're describing, but almost in some ways worse. Like we have been on the precipice of a lot of wars, and we've had media pushing for a lot of wars just in the past 22 years or so in this country. I don't think that Biden wants a war with Russia. I don't think that most people in his administration, but I definitely think they want effectively a mini Cold War centered around Ukraine that can generate an arms race. I think they want the economic military industrial complex benefit of a war, but without a hot war with a nuclear armed country that could easily become far worse than anyone could accept. I think that they can keep tensions high and pump hundreds of billions of dollars into these corporations over the course of the next few years under the auspices of it could happen at any time. But I don't think, when they were saying they wanted to invade Afghanistan and Iraq, they wanted to invade Afghanistan and Iraq. They wanted to send in the troops and drop the bombs. I don't think Biden wants to attack Russian soldiers, but I think there's a lot of people surrounding him that desperately want to sell weapons, especially in the absence of a conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq.
Regardless of what the intention is, whether it's a hot war or a cold war, it's insanely irresponsible when at the heart, the motivating factor here is weapon sales. A Cold War, in your analysis, that would just be a boon for the very defense contractors who were getting a lot of money, taking advantage of that gravy train in Afghanistan. But I also want to note, we've been engaging in an arms race in regard to China as well, right? I mean, we've been selling record weapons to Japan, to India, and I think that the rhetoric in regard to China has a lot to do with selling weapons as well, producing weapons as well. I don't think we're actually gonna go to war with China, but I do think that there are financial motives in place that maybe we should reform. Maybe we should really rethink the influence that these corporations have on the foreign policy decisions and even the foreign policy rhetoric that we hear from the federal government.
Yeah, I mean, especially when sitting Congress people can trade stock in those very weapons contractors. Let us never forget. I think the Biden administration, when it comes to foreign policy, is pretty much a wash, except in one area, which I think we can see movement on, and that is around its support for Saudi Arabia. It continues to support Saudi Arabia, even though Congress is super against it. There is a large majority, and I think we could see pressure. That to me is like a little sliver of hope, especially when it comes to their behavior in Yemen and also against American journalists. Russia, China, I'm not holding my breath. That's gonna get better.
Thanks for watching The Young Turks. I really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.